What's going on, guys? Bexio back, and today we got a brand new video on Plug Power, going off what happened last week. A very bad red week in stocks, bailed out last minute by Apple. They managed to come through with good earnings and took the entire stock market on their back and prevented it from falling into this bear market. But we're going to see if it actually was enough to stop the downward move in the stock market. But before we jump into that, if you are not subscribed, make sure you smash that sub button because we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. But let's take a look at Plug Power's chart here first, because we gotta look at some support lines here. We've seen this absolute plummet. It seems like it just goes down and down, and we're kind of seeing it. We saw it go completely through this red zone. I mean, we had a little bit of hope here, completely devastated through it. Right now, kind of hovering in this bottom line here, which is 1906. So hopefully we get above this 1906 and get above this on Monday, the market open, and try and stay above this in this green zone. If we don't, then the only other zone here is at this $13.67, and we don't want to really go down there. I think Plug right now is like super on sale. It's super undervalued, and it's actually getting shorted a pretty decent amount, an increase in shorts against Plug. But even just looking at these lines, this trend line here, obviously you want to break this as well. So the perfect case scenario would be to get above about $20.05 tomorrow on Monday. Is that going to happen? If it's a good day, if the market's actually rallying and we're seeing a good news maybe start to take over, but we're just in such a pretty bad spot in the market where if, good news is usually short-lived and bad news makes everything move down even further. We're in a pretty bad kind of spot. Apple managed to bail us out for just a little bit. We're going to see if it was enough to actually stop this bear market from happening. The indexes are already super close to correction territory, if not already in them. So we'll see how everything interacts, and hopefully Apple's earnings and guidance was enough to stop the bleeding in the market. We can take a look at why Plug Power stock is plummeting this week from Motley Fool, see what they have to say. Basically, the normal things we already know. We know Ukraine and Russia stuff, the geopolitics affecting the markets. We already knew that. And then on top of that, we have the confirmation from the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, that the central bank will increase interest rates in the near future. So they've been saying this and saying it and saying it some more. Nothing's actually been done, and we're kind of in a spot where they might not be able to do that. The economy's slowing down. These things are they're not accelerating. And it's going to be a problem. Raising interest rates on a slowing economy is going to slow it down even more. So we'll see if they actually go through with this. I think they might raise interest rates or try to for a little bit of time. But if the effects are so negative, they might be forced to step back and lower them again and kind of go back to this quantitative easing that the market and the economy is addicted to at this point. And a big thing for the entirety of the stock market was Peloton and Netflix right here published disappointing business updates. They had disappointing earnings and guidance that prompted far-reaching pullbacks for growth stocks. So this was kind of something that Netflix sparked the super downward move in the stock market with their earnings because they weren't good. And they were on their guidance wasn't good either. They basically said they don't really have too much room to expand in the US. Their subscription base or subscriber base is pretty much at the max. It's not going to be a growth factor for them that's going to really matter into the future. They got to go off into other countries and try and grow there, which is obviously going to be a little bit harder, going to take some more money, and their revenue and their numbers just wasn't as impressive as, what people were really expecting from them. And because of that, because it's a big tech stock, a lot of people thought that meant the economy slowing down, the market slowing down, and that triggered a big sell-off for all these assets. And then we came into Apple's earnings that actually Apple beat expectations by I think $5 or $6 billion. They have good guidance. They are continuing to make revenue growth on top of revenue growth. They said supply chain issues will probably start to clear up sooner rather than later. So they pulled the entirety of the stock market out of this bear market trend for a little bit, and we're gonna see if it was actually enough to stop the market from falling. Apple is, after all, the most valuable company in the entirety of the world, but going strictly on Plug Power still, those are the kind of outside factors forcing Plug to go down, and doesn't really have to do with Plug itself, but factors that affect everything in the market. And we still see Plug, they're facing their own supply chain constraints. They're having problems with the supply chain. They talked about that in their earnings. So that's kind of to be expected. But enough for all the bad news from this article. Something good here. We have an analyst that published a note on Wednesday covering Plug Power with a positive rating and a $26 one-year price target on the stock. So basically what they're saying is January 2023, their prediction is $26 per share for Plug Power. So at least it's higher than where it is now. I do think that depending on how hard these outside factors on the market hit and how long they last, that Plug is severely underrated right now and undervalued. Their revenue, if their revenue continues to keep growing, they're going to be doing great. And we can see that for their revenue right here, which has been amazing. So even going back to 2019, we see 56 million to 98. And then this is where it moved down. Not a great sign, but you can see moving here from 90 million to 40 million. Their next quarter was higher at 68. And then their next quarter was even higher than their 98. So a move down isn't necessarily the worst thing, but it's not great. We don't want them to move down in revenue for their next earnings report. But you can see 68 to 106 to 83 to 71, and this is the trend we're in right now. These past 3 quarters have been growth on growth. So you have 71, basically 72, moved to 125 basically, which was their highest, and then they topped that and made their highest ever at 143 million. So what we don't want to see is this revenue number come down substantially. We don't want it to go back to even like 100 million, 120 million is be all right, but we don't want to see it go to like 100 million or under 100 million. That would be a problem for the short term. Like we saw before here, it did have a downward turn and then took some time, but recovered to all-time highs again. I think we're on the path of revenue growth. If we see a 4th quarter in a row of revenue growth, it's going to be fantastic for Plug. That's what we're really looking for in these earnings coming up next month in February. I think they're coming up here very shortly, in a couple weeks even. So we'll see what they report. We're hoping it's going to be higher, or at least in this ballpark. Let's not go way lower than where we are right now, about $143 million. So hopefully they do that. They've been pushing forward, and I think they're going to end up doing that, reporting good numbers. We can see that from even the insiders here buying. So if we go to this chart, we've already seen this, but the insiders, the buying was massive. We saw 8 buys in December for the stock when it was around $29, $28, and we see it plummeting now. And that's just outside factors that Plug can't control. That's the reason it's going down. It really doesn't have too much to do with Plug's fundamentals. It has to do with interest rate changes, Russia-Ukraine problems, anything that's not in control of Plug Power's direct control. So it's kind of, if these things are happening and the fundamentals of Plug are still good, which they seem to be, everything seems to be going great, that would mean Plug Power is on a fire sale right now, along with a lot of stocks in the market. But this Plug just has extreme growth potential that, a lot of people might not be seeing right now because it's very short term. When fear takes over the market, people don't like listening to the Warren Buffett quote of be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy. In times of fear, people are too scared to be greedy, and in times of greed, people are too greedy to be fearful. So it's very hard for anyone to live up to that quote, but it gets quoted all the time, and it is an important quote to at least consider. And then to finish this video off, we've got Plug Power's short interest ratio. We can see that. Basically, it's right here. So we've got basically 12% short interest on Plug Power. These guys were at around 9%, a little under 9% just a month or two ago. Now they're at 12%. So not an insane increase, but an increase in shorts that could be pushing the price down. So that goes back to if Apple bailed out the market successfully and kept everyone from going into these terrible correction mindsets, then do we see a short squeeze or shorts cover on Plug? Completely possible to see that number come back down to 10%, 9%, where it was before, meaning shorts would cover. Hopefully, that gets us above our charts right here. If shorts have to cover, hopefully that gets us above this $20.13 mark, above this trend line, and maybe we can get a little bullish on the charts and bullish fundamentally, and then those can combine and take over, and maybe Apple did just enough to bail the entirety of the market out. Only time will tell, and either way, I think Plug's severely undervalued right now. Looking at 2024, we're going to pay attention to their earnings coming up in a couple weeks here, see what they report. If they grow revenue on top of revenue again for the fourth quarter in a row, that'll be massive. That'll be super important. And I just think that if Plug, even if it doesn't rally on that news, that it's so undervalued in 4 years, people will be wishing that they could have got in at $18, $19 per share. But as always, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So I'll see you in my next video.